Within is a third-person survival horror game where you play as Detective Sebastian investigating the scene of a mass murder at a mental hospital, and then all of a sudden things start going crazy. I don't want to spoil the story, but the game setting is actually a pretty cool twist. But for the most part, at least in the beginning, the game mixes setting and scenery up. In fact, the first half of this game is great, and guaranteed this game a spot on my Game of the Year list when the time came. But its position in that list was drastically affected the deeper I got into it. As a survival horror game, you're managing your health with pickups. Your health will regenerate, but only slightly, and when your health is below a certain point, you move slowly and aren't able to run. This game is a bit like Alone in the Dark. You have weapons here. As you progress the game, you'll get a pistol, a shotgun, sniper rifle, a crossbow-like weapon. There are grenades, a great variety of weapons for survival, and decent drop rate for ammo. Not too little, not too much, just enough to keep you staying careful with what you use. Enemies are spongy though, not killed by headshots all the time, and just because they're down doesn't mean they're out. You carry around matches and are able to catch bodies on fire just to be sure, but close enemies catch on fire as well, so these matches can be quite the useful weapon if you're out of ammo. But you could always just melee the enemy 1,000 times and pray you don't get killed while doing it. Unique for most survival horror games is that there's an Assassin's Creed like stealth mechanic where you can take out most unaware enemies from behind. You also have to stealth to disarm traps and get parts to craft crossbolts for your bow. But the run and stealth button are the shoulder buttons right next to each other, and as you would guess, this is going to lead you to occasionally running into traps when you mean to crouch by them. There are also jars of brain juice around the levels and off of enemies that act as currency you use to upgrade your stats, buy ammo, and increase the stats of your weapons. There are mirrors that take you back to the hospital where you do this. This is basically a safe room and it allows you to save the game as well, but the game does occasionally autosave. The first half of this game I found to be really enjoyable and terrifying. I was stressed in a good way, and enemies put up a great challenge. Missions were varied, I felt like I was in a movie. And then halfway through the game it starts to fall apart. The game goes from being scary to just frustrating. It becomes an anxiety fest of dealing with insta-kill enemies and resource draining section after resource draining section, dealing with spongy bosses, having to throw switch after switch, doing it multiple times in the same area to progress further. The game's initial near-perfect pacing crumbles and stumbles to a crawl, of dealing with way too many enemies, turning more into an action third-person shooter. Made worse by this game's awful checkpoint and autosave system. The game doesn't constantly autosave once you find an important item, or even when you make a decent amount of progression. And again, there are cheap insta-kill enemies and moments in this game. They're sometimes completely random. They'll hit you and you have to go through the 10 minutes of recollecting supplies over and over until you get lucky enough to either get away or not activate this random spawn. And also again, the second half of this game is focused more on anxiety than it is horror. And it's filled with these moments and trial and error chases with no indication of what you have to do, so you just have to keep doing it until you get it right with no checkpoints. It's not fun replaying these anxiety filled moments and sections. They aren't even fun the first time, but still I pushed forward. I was